You know what we should do today? Let's just all start with an Omicron exhale, right? You've all got your masks on, and I'll cover my mouth. And can we just relax and just take a big Omicron exhale? Whew. Do you have any weariness and fatigue, and you're just like, are we still in this thing, right? It's been 2 years, and have you felt, all the things we've had to reschedule and all the added stress as this pandemic has seemed to go on and on and on. All those tentative plans we made and we had to change, or not sure if we were going to be able to do that, some of those things or not. It's been a hard 2 years, yeah? So let's just take another nice deep Omicron exhale. Whew. Doesn't that feel good? But thankfully, it looks like the numbers are coming down and things are moving in a more positive direction, right? Or a more hopeful direction. Now, it seems to me like this COVID pandemic has brought out some of the best in people, but it's also brought out some of the worst in people. Are you with me here? Yeah. And unfortunately, we've become a very divided country, right? We've become a very divided people. It has affected our families. If you're like me, it's affected my relationships with my extended family. It's impacted our communities. It's impacted our nation, right? And there's a very interesting article. It's on the front page of our local paper, the Arizona Daily Sun. This was on Tuesday, February 8th. So this was a week ago, this past Tuesday. Some of you may have read it. It was on the front page. And the headline read, "Poll, Americans United on Political Divisions." And I'm quoting from the article now. There is one thing that America is united about, and that is how divided we are. Right? So that's the one thing we can agree on. We're very divided. And how sad is that, right? That we're at this point. And then this article goes on to say that voters were asked to rank division on a scale of 0 to 100, with 100 representing the edge of the Civil War. So people were asked to rank between 0 and 100. 100 means we're at the edge of the Civil War. Any guesses on where people came out, the average or the mean of this poll? If you read it? 98. Well, it kind of feels like 98, doesn't it? But a little less than that. It was 70.36, which is still kind of frightening, isn't it? That people in our country feel we're that close to possible civil war. Very disturbing. And I'm assuming it was a legitimate poll. I don't know. You can go back to the paper. Again, that was on Tuesday, February 8th, Arizona Daily Sun, if you want to check it out and all of that. But I don't think we need a poll, though, do we? I think we all have a sense that we are a very divided people, a very divided nation at this time. So that, to me, I ask the question then, so what are we to do? Are we to just give up hope and become even further entrenched? Well, as followers of Jesus, we of all people should be a people of hope. Yeah? And it's interesting to me that today in our gospel lesson, Jesus gives us a way forward out of this kind of division and all this animosity that we're feeling. And, it's during the time that Jesus walked on this earth, there in ancient Israel, he lived in a time very, very similar to ours. And if you look at the time that Jesus lived, it was a time of great division and animosity. There were political divisions, there were religious divisions, there were ethnic and racial divisions, all going on around Jesus. Does any of that sound Familiar? And isn't it interesting how the ancient wisdom of the Bible and the teachings of Jesus can speak so clearly into our lives here in 2022? Huh? The ancient wisdom that Jesus brings us speaks very clearly to us today. And we shouldn't be surprised, because Jesus always wants to lead people into healthy relationships and places where there can be healing and where people can find joy, right? So in this fractured world, then what ancient wisdom does Jesus have to share with you and me on how to seek greater unity and healthy relationships? Well, let's take a look at the scripture. You have it in front of you there. And in verse 27, Jesus says it's not complicated. Verse 27, well, it's not easy, right? It is. It's not, maybe not complicated, but it's certainly not easy, right? In verse 27, Jesus says, love your enemies. Huh? And here I don't think he means just somebody that lives in another country that we might be in a conflict with, but rather Jesus is talking more specifically about the people we live around, yeah? And includes especially those who maybe adamantly disagree with us on things like politics. And we're living in a time when people have very strong opinions, and they are very much willing to share their opinions with others, right? And because of that, our politics have become very polarized. And in fact, you hear the political rhetoric is about enemy, really, right? If you don't believe with me, then if you're on the other side, you are, in essence, the enemy, right? And that's why we've become so polarized and so fractured, because we see each other with this sense of suspicion and animosity. Well, think about those in your own families, your friends, your neighbors, your co-workers that you might be in conflict with, or those who are on the other side of the political spectrum. You know, those annoying people that keep sending you those chain emails and the YouTube videos that they think you just have to watch so they'll convert you to their way of thinking, right? Or the neighbors that have those big political flags in their yard, and you see those things and it just kind of puts your teeth on edge, right? So you know who I'm talking about. And so how are we to respond to that then? Well, Jesus says first, you are to love your enemies, or those you feel in conflict with. And is that going to be easy? It's not easy, is it? It's probably one of the hardest things we can do. And to do that, though Jesus says, really on your own, you're not going to be able to do this. So he says, here's something I want you to think about. He says, first of all, you need to start with what? Prayer. He says, first of all, you got to start by praying. He says in verse 28, begin by praying for your, quote, enemy, or that person you're in conflict with. Now, prayer is not primarily to change God's heart. But when I pray, whose heart is prayer meant to change? It's meant to change my heart, isn't it? Right? And that's a lot of the power in prayer. It's not trying to change God. It's changing how I see the world and how I see other people, right? And so if I have any chance of showing love to someone that I'm in conflict with, I have to first start by praying for that person or that group of people. And when we disagree with someone or a group of people, we just naturally, I guess, from evolution, we regress to the very primitive part of our brain. And when we do that, we tend to see the other person we tend to demonize and diminish and dehumanize the other person, right? It's very easy to do. And I don't like that. And I felt that lately. I don't like the way some of this stuff makes me feel when I get so agitated with all this hyped up rhetoric, I don't like the way it makes me feel. And so I have to pray about that, yeah? And to get back to the more the thinking part of my brain instead of that more primitive part of the brain. And so in order to be a non-anxious presence, I have to start with prayer. And that's sure what we need around us is non-anxious people, right? Not people that are all fired up and ready to get right in your face, yeah? So we need to be a non-anxious presence. And we begin by praying. And the energies of prayer. Now, when you reach out to someone who has deeply different opinions or worldview, and you reach out in humility and vulnerability, and you're seeking to connect with the person, it doesn't mean that the person's going to respond back with humility and vulnerability, does it? In fact, they probably won't, right? Well, you've experienced this. You've maybe helped somebody, and they haven't returned that favor you've done for them, and it can feel like a slap in the face, right? And so what does Jesus say when that happens? In verse 29, and I like the Message translation, verse 29, Jesus says, if someone slaps you in the face, stand there and take it. Or in the more traditional translation, it's turn the other cheek, right? And so really what Jesus is saying is don't seek retaliation or retribution, right? If you try to do something, kindness for somebody, and if they return it with a meanness, don't seek retaliation, don't seek retribution. Because, but that's so easy to fall into, isn't it? Here, I've reached out to you, and I'm trying to be kind, and you've been nasty back at me, and it feels like a slap in the face. And so it's so easy to want to retaliate, right? But when we do that, when we use harsh comments against harsh comments, what does that do? It only escalates it, doesn't it? And so Jesus gives us some really good wisdom, right? If somebody gives you a slap if it feels like a slap in the face, don't retaliate. Just let it go, right? And so as we respond with the energies of prayer then, when we pray for the situation or the person, then it can begin to change the situation. Now I want to mention a side note here that this passage about turning the other cheek has often been used in some very harmful ways, particularly people in domestic violence situations. And so, for example, women who might be in an abusive, violent situation with a man, and they hear this idea that if I'm getting hit, I should turn the other cheek because that's a Christian thing to do. Well, that's not at all what Jesus is talking about here. And in fact, if you're in a situation of domestic violence, it's important to get out of that and get to a safe place where the person can begin to heal and set up, necessary boundaries. And it's only then when you're in a safe place out of that sense of violence that healing can begin to happen and possible restoring the relationship, and hopefully the abuser and the abused can both begin to heal. So again, that's sometimes been used in a really harmful way, and so I just want to make note of that. Here Jesus isn't talking about somebody that's in a position of domestic violence at all. But what he's getting at here is that if we follow his wisdom, that we don't seek retaliation or retribution, right? Even though somebody might say something hurtful toward me, I don't respond with retaliation. Huh? And then in verse 31, Jesus gives us ancient wisdom that's so universal it's become known as the golden rule, right? When Jesus says, what does Jesus say? What's the golden rule? And isn't that great, right? We all know it because it makes so much sense, right? But it's so hard to follow, though, isn't it? Huh? And if more and more people could follow that simple advice, right, we'd have much less conflict and much less animosity, wouldn't we? Isn't that just beautiful, this ancient wisdom that Jesus gives us that's so applicable to our time and every time, right? So, we all want to feel respected. We all want to feel cared for, right? And if we treat other people that way, everything goes a lot better, right? And so in these opening verses then, Jesus says, what should we do? Well, he says, love, pray for, bless, give, and do for others, and not expect anything in return. Huh? And then this is summed up in verse 36 when Jesus says, verse 36, be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Huh? Or in the Message translation, God is kind, you be kind. Isn't that beautiful? Huh? I love that. So as the followers of Jesus then, we are to live as God lives, with mercy and kindness and generosity that goes beyond expectation, goes beyond comprehension, right? That people would sort of sit up and take note. Wow, there's something different about how this person approaches me than maybe other people, huh? And again, is this going to be easy to respond in this way, to center our lives in this? It's not going to be easy. It's going to be really difficult. And friends, that's why we need each other, right? We have to support each other. We have to encourage each other, right? So it's not easy, but you know what? It does lead to the better life, huh? The life of blessing that God desires for each of you and for all humanity. God's desires for less division, more love, and more kindness. Huh? And then Jesus finishes this verse 37 and 38, and this again is the Message translation. I really like this, so let me share it with you. Verse 37 and 38. Jesus says, be easy on people. You'll find life a lot easier. Give away your life, and you'll find life given back, but not merely given back with bonus and blessing. Giving, not getting, is the way. Generosity begets generosity. And I love that word. Isn't that so counter to our culture, isn't it? When Jesus says, giving, not getting, is the way. So countercultural, right? You think our culture could use that message? It's not about what I'm going to get. That's not where life is found, but life is found in generosity and giving and sharing, right? And the world's been broken for a long time. It's not the way God intended. And so the world's kind of upside down. And Jesus came to turn the world right side up again and to show us what right side up living looks like. And so that's his teaching today, right? The world's like this. It's all about getting. But Jesus says, let's turn it right side up. That's what the life really is about. It's about giving. Huh? And generosity begets generosity. Beautiful. So healthy relationships, healing, love, generosity, hope, and restoration flow from Jesus. And he wants that to flow from all of us. And during this time of so much division, isn't it interesting how the ancient wisdom of the Bible, the teachings of Jesus, can speak so clearly into our lives and issues here in this year of 2022, and how Jesus can show us then the way forward, right? And our nation is in desperate need of this wisdom, right? And as the followers of Jesus, if we're not about following this wisdom, who is going to be, right? So it has to start with you and me, right? God doesn't have a plan B. We are it. You and I are it, right? We are it. And Jesus says, follow this way. You want to know how to get out of this mess we're in? He says, lays it out for us, yeah? So friends, this is not easy. So friends, we need to support and encourage each other as we seek to follow then the wisdom and the ways of Jesus. Huh? And all God's people say, Amen.